we could tell the insurance company how long you had to live to the month. They don't care where you are on a mortality curve. They want to know how many more months does this person have left on earth. And that is that they know the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death for hundreds of millions of people. And it is some of the most accurate science on the planet. I believe it would permanently change the face of humanity.
Who are you?
I'm a human biologist and a researcher, biohacker. My background is in, of all things, mortality science. My undergraduate degrees were in biology. My postgraduate degrees are in human biology. I'm fascinated by the human body, its form, its function, how it can improve its performance. And I'm a researcher. I spent 22 years as a mortality expert in the insurance industry, which meant that if we got 5 years of demographic data on you and 5 years of medical records, we could tell the insurance company how long you had to live to the month.
To the month.
And I get a lot of flack about that. People say, oh, if you could predict death to the month, you'd win a Nobel Prize, or, only God can tell you when you're going to die. And that's very true. Obviously, if we do a mortality prediction on it, it doesn't mean December 12th, 2065, you're going to drop dead on that day. But it is very accurate science. If you think of the most successful financial institutions on the planet as a category are insurance companies. If you look at the failures during the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, which was a global crisis, in the US, we had 364 banks fail. You didn't have a single life insurance company fail. No other financial institution, no other investment enterprise, hedge fund, angel investor, venture capital firm would ever put tens of millions of dollars at risk on any kind of investment on one single variable. Yet every time a life insurance company bets on your life, or issues an annuity or a reverse mortgage or any number of other financial services instruments that are based on mortality, they're only betting on one factor. They don't care where you are on a mortality curve. They want to know how many more months does this person have left on earth. And it is some of the most accurate science on the planet. And they have perfected this. And the good news is that this science is very accurate, and I'm going to share a lot of the details of that today. But the downside of this industry, and the reason why I left it, was that during my tenure in this career, I was not allowed to have any contact with the patient or any contact with the treating physician. Now, I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I'm a human biologist. But if I was reading a medical record and saw a life-threatening drug interaction, I could not contact the patient. And this database where this information is drawn from, if this database could see the light of day, I believe it would permanently change the face of humanity. It would upend modern medicine in a way that would be completely catastrophic, because you see, they have information that no other database has, no other research study, no other financial institution, no other university has. And that is that they know the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death for hundreds of millions of people that they have all of these records on. If I'm a cardiologist and you come in to see me and I put a heart stent in your heart, well, when you leave my office, I don't know what happens to you 2 months later, 2 years later, 12 years later. I don't know if you died as a consequence of something that went wrong with the procedure I did, or if you died of something completely different. I don't know exactly what kind of impact on your life that procedure had or didn't have, unless it's contained in a very short-term clinical study. And not that I want to go into the whole science of mortality, but if you had access to this database, you would realize that the most common ailments that we suffer from are not diseases and pathology that are happening to us. They are things that are happening within us. I always say that if I was to boil my entire career down to a single sentence, it would be that the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. And nothing is more impactful than that statement. The presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. I have yet to find a single disease etiological pathway, something that's happening in the human body, causing pathology, causing disease, dysfunction, that doesn't have its roots in a lack of blood oxygen, or its roots is not aggravated by something called hypoxia, lack of oxygen. In fact, all human beings die of the same thing. We all leave this earth the same way, right? We all die of hypoxia, lack of oxygen to the brain. That's the definition of death. Only we tend to think of it as an event. Right? A gunshot wound, a bus, car, a stroke, heart attack. But the truth is, we are on a hypoxic curve, meaning we are accelerating quickly or accelerating slowly towards the grave. And the second thing that we discovered in this voluminous data-driven industry was that when you deplete certain raw materials in the human body, you get the expression of that deficiency. So what I mean is, we've all heard that disease, travels in families, or you might have genetically inherited hypertension or genetically inherited hypothyroid, genetically inherited drug and alcohol addiction, diabetes, depression, anxiety. These things tend to run in families. So we've accepted the myth in most cases that these are genetically inherited diseases. But think about this. The next time one of your listeners gets told that, oh, you have genetically inherited hypertension, what we call idiopathic hypertension, or genetically inherited hypothyroid, or if you have this genetically inherited disease or that genetically inherited disease, stop your physician and say, well, wait a minute, we've mapped the entire human genome. So we know every gene in the human body. Can you tell me what disease I inherited from my ancestor that's actually causing this condition? And watch their face go blank. Because in the majority of cases, we have accepted that disease travels in families when it's actually not the disease being passed from generation to generation. It is the inability for their body to refine a certain raw material, which causes a deficiency, which leads to that disease. So in other words, there's not a single compound known to mankind, not one. No mineral, vitamin, amino acid, protein, carbohydrate, no nutrient of any kind, no element known to man that enters the human body and is used in the format that we put it in. Everything that we put into our bodies gets taken in by the body and converted into the usable form. If you cannot make this conversion, you have a deficiency. And it is this deficiency that leads to these conditions. And so if you go hunting for that deficiency and you supplement, not for the sake of supplementing, but you supplement for the sake of deficiency, magic things happen in human beings. There is a superhuman inside of every person listening to this podcast. And if they actually were able to test themselves, do a genetic test, and look at what's called their methylation, how their body refines raw materials, and they were able to replace the deficiency that is holding their body back from creating adequate levels of neurotransmitter and achieving normal mood, moving contents through the gut and achieving normal gut function, elevating emotional state, deepening their sleep, quieting their mind, all of these conditions that society has labeled different pathologies and disease, then they would begin to thrive in a way that they just never thought possible.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.